Hello, I'm Ernest Underwood, and this is the fourth lesson of the life and work of a preacher. In our last lesson, we dealt with several things that a preacher needs to know. We looked at some of the pitfalls, or we began looking at some of the pitfalls of preaching, and as we stated last week, these pitfalls, I've borrowed them from the book by Brother Jack Myers, uh, who has an excellent book on it, a book that I have recommended to you students. I would urge you to read all of that book, and especially in the area of pitfalls, we're talking about those. I will use his comments as well as I'll add some of my own. But we were talking about uh, when we ran out of time last week, we were talking about taking sides in a purely personal dispute. As a preacher, you don't want to get embroiled in somebody else's arguments. Stay away from it. It may be a dear friend that is disputing something with someone, but it's a personal thing. Just advise your friend to work it out with the one that he has problems with the dispute with, but don't get involved in it unless it is a matter of doctrinal purity or if it's a matter of faith. So if it's just a matter of opinion where somebody is holding one opinion and someone is holding another, it may not even be about the church or about religion for that matter. It may just be a personal dispute. But don't get involved. This would be my advice to you, and I have taught this in other places, and I tell the students the same thing. Don't take sides in an argument that you have no business in, and don't let someone drag you into that argument. I think the last thing that we said last week was take a long time in developing a fixed opinion about either people or events reported to you. Now, you are going to be the target, and just live with that. This is not a bad thing. You are an authority figure. You are a person who is supposed to know some things. And if you're older, you're supposed to have the wisdom to know everything. And of course, we older preachers know that, don't we? But anyway, I say that in jest. But don't just jump right in to the pond of by making a fixed opinion until you know all of the evidence. You know both sides of the issue. I know where people have, and preachers have ruined their reputation and have ruined their ability to get along with people by taking the side or having a fixed opinion about something that fixed opinion can change. Remember that if in this dispute you listen to one and it sounds good, you're a good friend, and then you listen to the other, you may want to change your fixed opinion to something else. So it's just better to stay out of it, and in a very kind and loving way, tell these brethren, try to help both of them if you can, but don't start with a fixed opinion. And I know my friend would not purposely deceive me, and probably he wouldn't, but he may be just not knowingly telling you things that are not true. It is up to you to make the decision and do a little investigating. You don't have to do it in their presence or in your friend's presence, but you can ask around, and people who, especially if you're new to the congregation, you can ask around in just an information gathering way of what are some of the problems that brethren have, and you can probably get an earful. Now we go to another, and that Brother Myers puts in there as a pitfall, and he says it's a fussy, sarcastic, and smart aleck manner. Now I don't want to be unkind, and I try never to be unkind, but sometimes preachers just have a know-it-all attitude. I hope that I have never given that attitude to anyone. I won't say that I haven't, but I didn't do it purposely. But sometimes preachers, they realize they've either gone to college and they've graduated from college with a bachelor's degree or master's degree, or they've graduated from a school of preaching that is well known for its doctrinal stance and so forth, and they come out full of vim and vigor, as someone says, or vim or vinegar and vigor, whatever it is, but they come out and they seem to think that they are the only recipients of the truth that they know. And I know that it's not done purposely in most cases. There are a few arrogant ones. There are a few arrogant old preachers too. It's not all in the younger age. But just remember that you remember why you went to college, or remember why you went to a preacher training school. You went to learn. And when you learn, understand that you, in 2 years or 4 years, you're not going to know the answers to all the questions. In fact, you're not even going to know all the questions. So don't be quick to be fussy and, well, I'm not going to listen to this anymore. Or sometimes people will ask a question and preachers will give, or maybe other people will give a sarcastic answer. We are not in the business of sarcasm as preachers. We are not. Sarcasm can be used, but we want to use it very carefully. But because sarcasm, if it is used in a careless way, can be offensive and it can do a lot of damage. So be careful of your use of sarcasm, and especially in what my mother used to call a smart aleck mouth, or a smart mouth. I think I had my jaw slapped a few times for something like that. I don't usually tell that on myself, but sometimes we, even as a high school student or as a grade school student, we learn something today that we think nobody else knows, and we can just, if somebody says anything, we can just smart off to them and let them know who I am and what I know, and sometimes we make a fool of ourselves. But don't do that. I don't know a better way to put it than that. As Brother Myers said, have and hold your convictions. If you have studied and you have convictions about something, you have the evidence for those convictions. Don't surrender them, but don't express them in a sarcastic or smart mouth way that will cause people to be turned off from you. You don't find Jesus doing that. Jesus would answer them. He would give them and he would condemn especially the Pharisees and the scribes and so on. But he didn't use it he didn't use his teachings in a smart mouth way. He was always kind. He was very he condemned them many times. In fact, some of the worst condemnation that he ever gave to anybody is recorded in Matthew chapter 23 with the 7 woes that he gave to the scribes and the Pharisees. But even after that, he said, "Come unto me, all ye that labor and are heavy laden, and I'll give you rest." After that, he said that, "Oh, Jerusalem, Jerusalem," and so on. You know those passages. So don't use that kind of attitude with anyone. Use a Christian attitude. I like to, I won't say that I have not been guilty of doing that. I've tried to avoid it. Maybe sometimes I didn't do it and somebody thought I did, but nonetheless, we need to, as much as possible, use that as you would that others do unto you, you do unto them. Recall Jesus' statement in Matthew on that do to others not as they do to you, but as you would want them to do to you, you do to them, whether they do that way with you or not. Be kind to people, kindness and gentleness. And, well, in life, take religion out of the matter, take the Bible out of the matter. In life, nobody or no one likes a smart mouth person who knows everything and he's glad to tell you everything that he knows. And sometimes he just doesn't know what he's talking about. It is important in your dealings with others to let it always be in your thinking to have a positive and earnest manner. If somebody, I recall one time I was talking to or actually debating with, in a private debate with a Pentecostal holiness preacher, and I simply, he was making an argument of some things, and I held up my New Testament. I said, "But can you prove them in this? Can you prove it in this?" And I held my Bible out, and he slapped it out of my hand. He said, "I don't care what that says." And it hit the ground, and he put his foot on it. Well, I could have done something rash there. I didn't have to, because this man's son, who was also a Pentecostal preacher, he said, "Now, Dad, this is not the way to do this." And he apologized, and that was the end of it. But I did not fuss at him. I didn't get harsh with him. I just kept it at that. Can you prove what you're saying by this book, the book I had was the Bible in my hand, on my New Testament. And later on, I learned that this man had done, the preacher's son had done some extra studying about his beliefs and was having some doubts about it. I don't know whatever became of that, but maybe I would like to think that maybe because I didn't slap back at him or punch him out or something like that, which no Christian ought to do that, but maybe we can have some good influence if we know what we're talking about. If we know the scriptures, that's what we talked about in the very first two lessons, that we must know the scriptures, know that we know them. We must never compromise them. We must never misapply them in any way. And if we know that, and people see that we know this, and meet their arguments in a kind way, then maybe progress has been made. So don't have a fussy or sarcastic or smart aleck manner about you. Remember, be meek. That doesn't mean be mousy. It doesn't mean, pardon me, it doesn't mean be afraid of your shadow. It means that you let something greater or someone greater than you rule your life. Remember who you are in any situation. You are a Christian. And if you go into preaching, pardon me, you are going into that great work where you go forth and preach the gospel to lost souls. You preach the gospel to unfaithful souls, and you preach the gospel to faithful people, because you preach the Bible, and this is your job. It's not to fight and fisticuffs and so forth, but conduct yourself as a Christian in all that you do. Now, having said that, let's go back to, or go on to, a fourth pitfall that Brother Myers mentions, and that is being used. We talked about that a little bit in the taking of sides and so forth, but there, you just have to know, because of your position as a preacher or minister, if you prefer, people will use you by asking questions when they may have an axe to grind with another someone in the church, or in another church somewhere, or another person, that they will have an axe to grind with you. Don't get involved with them in this. This can be especially true if one is asking questions, if the one who is asking the question disagrees with a decision of the elders. Now, we know, you know, and I know, and any Bible student knows, that it is the position or the work of the elders to lead the flock and to defend the flock and so on, feed the flock, lead it, and discipline it when necessary. And there are people who may not have approved of the appointment of a certain person as an elder, and so they will use you, especially if you're new to the congregation. It's things that these elders may have been appointed 2 or 3 years before this, but there will be some people, or there can be, I'll put it that way. Don't be surprised if you run upon this situation, that somebody will come and they say, well, Brother John, what do you think about so-and-so? Well, you're either new to the place, or you want to answer a question. Well, you try to give a biblical answer. But be careful of how the question is asked, and try to find out why are you interested in this particular subject. Because that person, very well, as we've said, he could have an axe to grind with someone else in the church, and it can be especially true if this person has an axe to grind, as we say, with elders, or with an elder. That it just happens, and it's not something that you want to be involved with. And also, you need to be duly warned that the one who would use you privately while you're engaged in a gospel meeting with that church, and that they will do this, and they do it for a purpose, again, to take a shot at somebody. Well, we've got Brother so-and-so here in a gospel meeting, or we had him in a gospel meeting, and I asked him this is what he said. Now you're saying something else. Are you saying Brother so-and-so was wrong? And this person is trying to, he has an ulterior motive. He is not trying to get at the truth. He's trying to justify himself in what he's doing, in his objection to the elders, or in his objection to someone else. He may have a pet doctrine. We're going to talk about that a little later on, but he may have some pet belief that he believes, and it doesn't matter how many scriptures would show that what his position is wrong. His daddy or his granddaddy or somebody had this, and he has it, and he's going to try to push this over. I know at present that I am painting a rather sad picture. And I don't mean to be, but I'm trying as an older man to, if you're young, I've met one of you, my students, but the others I haven't. I don't know your ages, but I have been through some of these experiences, and by large, most of the members are not this way, but there are those cantankerous members that will do what they can to question you or to get an answer from you that they can use against an elder, and then state that, well, Brother John said this, that the Bible says this, and he's the preacher and he ought to know. Well, that person is not being fair. Maybe he's sincere, but he's not being fair. And especially if it's in a time when you're in a gospel meeting, you know nothing about the congregation other than it's supposed to be a faithful church, and you go and you preach in a gospel meeting, and you don't need to get, again, embroiled in some of the problems of that church. If the church has problems, ask the elders about it. Talk to the elders. If you think there are problems, talk with them and find out from them. That's a better way to do it than to talk behind or talk to one or two and get their thoughts on it when they are, maybe they're against the eldership. I've known people who were against the eldership simply because they didn't think that anybody ever qualified for an elder. And so you can run into lots of problems, and you will just do yourself a favor not to let people use you in that sense. And sometimes they're honest, they're sincere, they just want to know something, they have some doubts about something, and they maybe are wanting reassurance from you, but they have a disagreement, I would say. Maybe not a bitter disagreement, but a disagreement with something that the elders have said. And many times it's nothing to opinion. Now, elders, you know, and I know, elders have no authority to make doctrine. They have no authority to change doctrine. They have no authority, any more authority than you and I do, to add to or take away from what God said. But there are areas that they have absolute authority in the oversight of the church and the things of just the operation of the church on a weekly or daily basis. Now, having made those statements, let's go on to another pitfall that Brother Myers mentioned, and this is running with one person for a crowd. Now, before we get into this, understand this from me and accept this as what I am saying, that it's a preacher has a right. A preacher and his family have a right to special friends. I have special friends. I've had special friends in every congregation, not because they were different from others, but generally because we had the same interest. I have no interest in fishing and hunting. I'm not against it. I just got tired of trying to do it, and I quit. But when I was in a certain congregation, I went out and got my pilot license, and we had 2 or 3 others in the church that were either into flying or they were pilots themselves, and we had something in common, and we talked about that, and we got together, and we were good friends. That didn't mean that we left other people out of our conversations or out of our group, because if anybody wanted to get in, come in and talk about it with us. But it wasn't that we were always with one another, and especially as a preacher, you regardless of how old you are, how young you are going to be considered, and let's emphasize the, not a preacher. You're going to be the preacher of this church. And as the preacher, they're going to learn to love you. They're going to learn to appreciate you. And they can't do that if you don't spend some time with them. Now, it's not an old buddy-buddy thing. When I worked as a mechanic, I learned and I was friendly with my fellow workers. It wasn't a buddy-buddy, clannish sort of thing. It's just we were doing the same thing and we had something in common. Remember, as a preacher, you have something in common with every member of the church where you're preaching. You are all children of God. You have all been saved by the blood of Christ as you obeyed the gospel. Now, again, you can have your own special friend. I was at one congregation many years ago where my wife was told that the lady said, "I feel sorry for you." And my wife said, "Why?" And she said, "Because you can't have any friends. Because you'd be accused of showing partiality." That's not so. You can have friends. And you can have friends without showing partiality. But don't just run with one person. What do I mean by that? Well, avoid being with these people exclusively. Avoid being or catering to people who have more money. They can do things for you. They can invite you out to eat with them or whatever advantages it might be. Don't cater to these. Sometimes there are people who will try to use you in the fact that they have this. Now, most people, again, don't, but you will find some who will. But on the other hand, don't cater to those who have less money. Jesus didn't make having money or not having money a criterion for one becoming a child of God and for going to heaven. He said, "Not everyone that says to me, 'Lord, Lord,' shall enter the kingdom of heaven, but he who does the will of my Father." There is the criterion. And if this person, and again, we are out, I can remember when I was a child, or in my teenage years, that the church was not integrated. And there were different people of different skin tones that were not accepted, or they just didn't get together. And if there was prejudice there, if there was partiality there, or if it was some sort of racist, as they call it, the new word in my generation, if it was something like that, it's wrong. Don't cater to someone because of the color of their skin, but don't avoid them because of the color of their skin, and they shouldn't avoid you because of the color of your skin. Don't let these things be the criterion for you being friendly and loving and helpful to anyone who is a child of God, or for that matter, to anyone who is not a child of God, if they're willing to accept your help and perhaps open some doors. It would open doors to help them to know the gospel. Don't discount this. But remember that you are the preacher for the entire congregation. And don't leave anybody out. Don't leave any ethnic group or any other kind of group. Don't leave them out of your visiting. Don't leave them out of your friendliness. Greet them. If you have social dealings, invite these people as well as others. Let the people know, and don't do it just, I've done this, I'll check it off here, and I'll check it off there, and I'll check it off there, like some people do in church work. But genuinely love these people. I went to Jacob's Well several years ago, and I remembered the woman that came. I remembered the account in John, how the woman came. The disciples had gone on into the city to get something to bring some food, and Jesus is tired and thirsty, and this woman comes to draw water, and he says, "Give me to drink." And she said, "How is it that you, a Jew, is asking for me, a Samaritan, for water? Don't you know that the Jews hate the Samaritans and the Samaritans hate the Jews?" Did Jesus say, "Oh, you're right. I better, I apologize for asking"? No. How did Jesus teach, or how did he treat that woman? Even the woman taken in adultery, how did he treat her? He was gentle, he was kind. And I just wish that we as preachers would use kindness. I'm not talking about mousiness. I'm not talking about preaching sermons that could be preached in any other religious organization without any objection. I'm not talking about compromising doctrine, not preaching hard sermons and preaching on heaven and hell and everything in between. But we don't have to do it in a braggart manner. We don't have to do it in a belligerent manner. It should be our desire that if there are people in the audience when we're up there preaching that are not Christians, that our method of presentation and the very thing that we say will lead that person to appreciate the gospel, appreciate the author of the gospel, and maybe eventually become obedient to that gospel. Isn't that why we preach? We preach, and again, if you don't have that burning desire, good brother and friend and student, do something else. Don't preach. If you can't just stand not preaching, you just have to preach because it's just burning, as we mentioned about Jeremiah, that it just burned in his belly. He said, I've got to preach. I cannot forbear. But do it because you love the people. Whether they love you back or not, you do it because you love the people and because you love the Lord. Now, let's talk about presentation. We're talking about presentation of our sermon. Here, Brother Myers mentions about aping a preacher. This is a pitfall. Don't ape a preacher. By that he means don't try to listen to one or watch one and have the same actions that he has, and the same time when he raises his voice, you raise your voice. And as I saw one time on a young man's outline, he had a little note out here, strike the pulpit here. Don't make it fake. You should be there in the pulpit so full of your subject that you have no consciousness that you're using your hands or even that you're raising your voice sometimes to emphasize a point. Don't make it fake. I guess that's what we say. I know some preachers, it's their way of doing it. It's fine with me if they want to do it. I just never did. But there are those who, when they're reading the scripture, they read it in a totally different voice than when they're preaching. And they emphasize every word in a different type of voice, like trying to make it a voice of authority. Well, the way I read a passage doesn't give it. That's not what gives it its authority. It has its authority because it's in the Word of God, and I need to understand that, and I need to use my own presentation in it, the way that I want to look to the people. In that, I may have made this suggestion before, but I've been known to repeat myself. When you are studying a lesson, you've developed it. We'll talk about that maybe at another time, but you've developed this lesson, and now you're going to preach it. Get in your bedroom before your bedroom mirror. Get you a chair or something you can put your notes on, and then look at yourself in the mirror and preach that sermon to yourself, just like you'd want to preach it to the congregation. Practice it. You know, a ball player practices it. They don't come out there and just go out there and hit the ball or sink one in the basket or throw a pass. They practice and practice and practice this. You need to practice your presentation. You need to know what you want to emphasize. With me, when I want to emphasize something, I use an outline, but I don't use one that much. But if I have an outline and I want to use that, or if I want to emphasize something, I highlight that either in my Bible or I highlight it in my notebook or my notes. And then I highlight it because this I want to emphasize. And as I told my students in India the last time I was there, I was there for 5 months, but in fact, I bought them. I brought them some from over here in the States, a bunch of colored pencils. And I encourage them to highlight their Bible. Don't use ballpoint pen. Don't use red ink. Go to the Walmart or wherever you go and get a highlighter. And a highlighter, I like the yellow one myself. It shows up good. It draws my attention. And you don't have to brush it heavy. And if you don't brush it heavy, it will not bleed through your Bible paper. I've learned that through the years. If you use red ink or blue ink or something, it will bleed through and it'll mar the words on the back of the opposite page of that. So, but learn as you're practicing this sermon, note what you want to emphasize. If you want to emphasize that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, then choose passages that definitely state this, where he himself called himself that, and where God called him his beloved Son, and so on. And emphasize these, because what you're trying to do, you're trying to tell your audience, you're trying to convey to them that there was a man called Jesus that was born of a woman, and he was called the Son of God, and he was the Son of God, and that it is by him, in fact, this one man, the man God, said, except you believe that I am he, you shall die in your sins, and no man can come to the Father except by me. This is the emphasis, whether you're talking about the worship of the church or whether you're talking about Old Testament prophecies. Just remember that in all of this, Jesus is the central figure, and present it in a genuine way. Don't have a preacher's voice as different from a conversational voice, and develop your own style of use of a sermon outline and the style of it. Now, my style, I'll tell you this, forgot what time I started this, but my style is this. And if I had a board here, I would write it out for you, but I don't. But in my developing a sermon, I decide first of all what the topic is. What is the subject going to be? Like I assigned you the importance of the church. I put that at the top of the page, and I put it in all capital letters. That's going to be the subject. Then I put in there, put that proposition. What the proposition is, what am I going to do with this subject? What am I trying to prove, or what am I trying to teach? What am I trying to get people to see in this? Well, I want them to see, first of all, if the church is important, and then why is it important if it is? And then the objective of my sermon is to cause the hearer to have a better understanding and a better knowledge of what the Word of God says about the church, whether it's in prophecy, whether it's in fulfillment, whether it's in worship, or whatever it is. And then I start in what I call the introduction. And I perhaps have a passage to use. I maybe put 1, 2, 3 under the introduction. Then I come to the discussion. And into the discussion, I start out with Roman numerals. Roman numeral 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I use the computer. When I was using a typewriter, I use that. Or if I write it out by hand, I have the discussion, and then I go down double space there, and I go down and Roman numeral 1. The church is important because of number 1, and whatever I want to put under it. When I put that Roman numeral 1, I indent about 4 spaces, not 3, but about 4, maybe even 5, so that if I have a long outline, I get down there to 8, and where I've got a B and 3 ones or capitalized, that I still have some space that I can indent. But then under that, I put Arabic 1, 2, 3, and 4. If I have something under Arabic 1 that I want to take a little further, I'll put Arabic 1 in parentheses. If I have something to go under that, I'll put a capital A, and then I'm indenting all the time. Of course, I very seldom get down to the A, B, C in capitals, or I don't think I've ever gotten down to A, B, C in small, or A, B, C in capitals in parentheses, and then I'll keep going down. But it gives you, I use the 1, 2, 3 system simply because if you've got 7 points and you've got A, B, C, D, E, if you're using alphabet, well, which one is the 7th? If I've got my 5th point, I've got it number 5, so I can read it and know what I'm doing. But then when you finish Roman numeral 1, go to Roman numeral 2, and do the same thing. But put it in an organized manner, and if you are having difficulty with it, put it in, I love the computer for this, you can put it in whatever font that you want, whether size, that where you can read it. You get older like I am, and your eyesight gets dim, it's good to have it in something besides 12 or 10 font. But anyway, just develop your own style and your own use of that style, and let it be yours. I've listened on tape to great men. I've had the privilege of listening many times to different of the great men who've gone on before, and they have great styles, but I never could imitate Brother Foy Wallace. There's no way I could listen or to try to preach like he did. I just didn't have that ability. But I can preach like Ernest Underwood, for whatever it's worth. I can do that. And That's what I do. So you preach what you know and preach it in the way that is comfortable to you. Not don't put something out here, raise your hand here or shout here or something like that. That becomes like it's in a can or something. Recorded. Don't do that. Just make it in a conversational, loud enough. Make sure you're speaking loud enough so all can hear. But use use your own style in this to do this. We're going to get started on one other. I think we are almost out of time, but we will go for another 5 minutes or so. And if I'm not doing good timekeeping, we'll have a short lesson. If I'm not doing good timekeeping, you may be going overtime. But let's talk about another pitfall. And brethren, we're going to spend some time next week on this as well, because here is one of the great pitfalls of many preachers, and that is with women. I don't mean your wife. I don't mean your daughter. I don't mean your mother. I preached, and have been preaching for some 56, 57 years. And in that length of time, I have had people call me, preachers call me, and Brother Underwood, you know any place that's looking for a preacher? Well, why are you looking? I thought you were in a good place. Well, Brother Underwood, I had an affair. I just remained silent for a minute, and I said, no, you didn't have an affair. You committed adultery. And you ought to be kicked out, or you ought to, if you don't repent, you'll never be of any influence in that congregation. You do need to leave. There's just no excuse, no reason for you to do that. Brother Gus Nichols used to come to Pensacola when I was there, and he'd teach every Monday night for 2 or 3 hours, and just for the sake of those of us who were there who were trying to preach. But he made this statement, and I'm going to make this statement, and then I'm going to close to make just a comment or two about it, because I don't want to run over time. But he said, brethren or preachers, always keep a desk or table between you and any woman who comes to you with a question or a problem. And brethren, if you don't learn anything else from tonight's lesson or from this lesson, you learn that. You don't sit down beside, if a lady comes to your office or your study and she has a problem, you keep that desk or that table in between you at all times. Even the times when she breaks down in tears and you are touched by it and you want to go over and around and console her, don't do it. I'll talk more about that in our next session, but we're going to close this session at this time. Thank you for being in the class and for listening. May God bless you.